In the vastness of the Pacific Ocean lies a small cluster of islands that few people have ever heard about. Shaded by lush palm trees, surrounded by endless turquoise waters, and touched gently by warm tropical breezes, Wallis and Futuna might seem like any other paradise in this remote corner of the world. Yet beneath the peaceful waves and the whispering palms lies an extraordinary story, one that has shaped the hearts of its people in a remarkable way. Today, if you visit these islands, you'll notice something striking. The ringing of church bells gently echoes across the beaches, and humble chapels dot the landscape, nestled quietly among the villages. Everywhere you look, faith is woven deeply into daily life, quietly guiding the steps of almost every inhabitant on these islands. This profound devotion, shared by nearly every man, woman, and child here, didn't arrive by chance. It came through sacrifice, courage, and compassion, a single act of love powerful enough to change an entire nation. But how exactly did these islands become home to one of the most deeply Catholic populations in the world? How did the gentle prayers of a distant, humble missionary come to shape the very soul of Wallis and Futuna? This is the extraordinary tale of how one person's quiet faith and compassion overcame darkness and fear, transforming an entire community forever. And as we begin our journey, we must travel back in time. Far from the gentle shores of Wallis and Futuna, in a quiet village deep within the rolling countryside of France, a young boy grew up dreaming of a life far different from his own. His name was Peter, and from the earliest days of his childhood, everyone who knew him felt there was something special about him. Peter was not remarkable because he was wealthy or powerful. He didn't stand out because of grand adventures or extraordinary talents. Instead, it was the simple purity of his heart and his extraordinary kindness that touched everyone around him. Villagers would often find him quietly helping those in need, comforting friends, or lost deep in thoughtful prayer beneath the quiet shadows of an old church. Even as a boy, Peter was deeply moved by the idea of dedicating his life to something greater than himself. His parish priest quickly recognized Peter's gentle spirit, wisdom, and sincerity, guiding him towards his calling with quiet confidence. Peter embraced his spiritual journey and soon found himself at the local seminary, studying day and night, preparing his heart for a life filled with service and love. When the time came for Peter to become a priest, the moment was filled with humble joy rather than grand celebration. He began his ministry quietly, assisting in a small parish where many had forgotten the warmth and comfort of faith. At first, the village church was nearly empty, the aftermath of troubled years having turned many away. But slowly, through kindness, compassion, and his genuine love for people, especially the sick and elderly, Father Peter began winning hearts back to God, one gentle act at a time. Yet, Peter's heart was restless. Deep within, he felt called not just to comfort familiar faces, but to carry his quiet message of love somewhere far beyond the hills and fields of his native France. He dreamed of traveling to distant lands, places he had only read about, to share with strangers the same quiet hope he had given his small French village. This desire finally led Peter to join a special missionary community. He knew the journey ahead would not be easy. Yet, despite the uncertainty and challenges awaiting him across the seas, he felt peace. It was a journey of faith, and Peter trusted fully in the gentle guidance of the heart that had led him thus far. Soon, a letter arrived, announcing the start of the mission he had long prayed for, a mission that would carry him halfway across the globe, to islands he had never seen, and a future he could hardly imagine. And so, with quiet courage and an open heart, Father Peter set sail, unaware that his journey would one day touch countless lives, changing the fate of an entire community forever. Now here is where it gets interesting. Father Peter's journey across the endless ocean was long and filled with uncertainty. The ship carrying him and a small group of fellow missionaries pushed steadily through towering waves and beneath wide open skies. Days turned into weeks, and the gentle coastline of France soon faded into distant memory. Finally, after months at sea, their ship gently approached the shores of a remote island known as Futuna. The land appeared before them, lush and inviting, its emerald green mountains rising from the clear, blue waters. As the missionaries stepped onto the soft sands of the beach, they felt both wonder and uncertainty. This place was beautiful, yet it was also completely unfamiliar, a world they knew little about. In these first days, Father Peter faced many unexpected challenges. The language spoken by the islanders sounded strange to his ears, filled with sounds and rhythms he struggled to master. The customs and traditions, too, seemed mysterious and difficult to understand. Even the simplest interactions were marked by hesitation and confusion, causing frustration and sometimes gentle laughter on both sides. Yet Father Peter remained patient and humble. Instead of becoming discouraged, he quietly observed, listened, and learned. He greeted everyone with kindness, offered help without expecting anything in return, and shared the peaceful nature of his presence through gentle smiles and thoughtful gestures. Still, despite his patience and good heart, very few islanders initially seemed open to the message he brought. Day after day, Father Peter walked tirelessly from village to village, speaking gently to anyone who would listen, planting seeds of friendship and trust. But progress was painfully slow, and often he felt a sense of isolation, wondering whether he was truly meant to be here. As days stretched into months, Father Peter leaned even more deeply into his faith. He trusted that the small acts of kindness and quiet moments of connection he shared with the people would eventually grow into something beautiful. He continued caring for the sick, helping the elderly, comforting those in sorrow, never expecting praise or recognition in return. Yet inside, his heart yearned for a sign that his efforts, no matter how small, were making a difference. Little did he know, a moment was coming, unpredictable and powerful, that would test him in ways he had never imagined, forever changing both his life and the lives of everyone on the island. Then, one stormy evening, the sky darkened suddenly, clouds thickening into ominous shades of gray. Winds began to howl fiercely, whipping through the tall palm trees, shaking huts and tearing at the roofs. The ocean, usually calm and inviting, rose up angrily, sending waves crashing violently onto the shore. A powerful cyclone had arrived, tearing across the island without mercy. When the storm finally passed, Father Peter stepped out from his simple dwelling into the quiet aftermath. What he saw broke his heart. The island he had grown to love had suffered terrible destruction. Homes lay shattered, trees uprooted, fields and crops washed away, leaving behind chaos and suffering. But in the face of devastation, Father Peter's compassionate spirit shone more brightly than ever. Without hesitation, he went from village to village, comforting the frightened, healing the injured, and helping rebuild shelters from whatever was left behind. He offered a gentle hand, a listening ear, and comforting prayers to those who needed it most. Slowly but surely, the islanders began to see Father Peter not just as a stranger from distant shores, but as a friend, a gentle presence whose heart truly cared for their well-being. Even those who had resisted him began to notice something remarkable in the quiet kindness of this humble man. Soon, he earned a name among the people, who whispered warmly about the foreigner they called the man with the gentle heart. Yet, as Father Peter's quiet goodness touched more hearts, it also drew the suspicion and anger of others. Among them was the powerful king of the island, a man whose authority rested upon traditions deeply rooted in local customs and spiritual beliefs. He watched nervously as more of his people warmed to Father Peter's teachings, fearing that this outsider's gentle message would erode his own control. Tensions began to rise slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed at first. Father Peter, always hopeful, continued his gentle mission, unaware of the shadows gathering behind the scenes. But soon, the uneasy calm would break, and Father Peter's faith, compassion, and courage would face their greatest test yet. He had come to Futuna hoping to touch hearts, but the cost of doing so would soon become greater than he ever imagined. Across the island, beneath the shade of palm trees, and within homes lit by flickering lamps, quiet conversations about Father Peter grew louder each day. The gentle kindness that drew many villagers closer to him was precisely what made the island's king deeply unsettled. The king had long enjoyed authority, not only as a political ruler, but also as the island's spiritual leader, guiding his people through ancient rituals and customs. He saw Father Peter's message so simple and compassionate as a threat to the old ways that kept his power secure. As the missionary's popularity gently spread, the king's unease turned into frustration and then anger. Yet, the king's fears reached their peak when his own son, a prince who lived in another part of the island, chose to listen closely to Father Peter. The prince soon embraced the message of kindness, humility, and love, converting quietly but profoundly to the faith Father Peter had introduced. For the king, this moment felt like a betrayal, an unbearable challenge to his authority. Filled with fury, the king summoned his most trusted warrior, a fierce man respected and feared throughout the island. He ordered the warrior to confront his son and end this spreading influence once and for all. The warrior soon arrived at the prince's dwelling, finding him gathered quietly with friends, deep in prayer. A sudden conflict erupted, sharp and brief, resulting in the warrior suffering a painful wound. Embarrassed and enraged, he quickly turned away, searching instead for the true target of his anger, the gentle missionary who had begun this change in the hearts of his people. At that moment, Father Peter was alone, quietly tending to a minor injury he'd suffered earlier while gardening. He sat peacefully inside his modest hut, unaware of the danger approaching. The door opened suddenly, and the wounded warrior stood there, breathing heavily, demanding help. True to his nature, Father Peter immediately moved to offer aid, compassion in his eyes, kindness guiding his actions. Yet, as he turned to fetch supplies to care for the warrior's injury, the true intention behind the visit was revealed. Without warning, several more figures emerged, their intentions dark and violent. Father Peter, gentle to his last moment, barely had time to understand what was happening. His quiet hut, once a place of kindness and comfort, became the site of sudden tragedy. The warrior and his men struck swiftly and mercilessly, ending the life of the humble missionary, whose only wish had been to love and serve. As silence once more settled over the island, word of the tragedy quickly spread. But what the king and his warrior could not have imagined was how deeply their violent act would change Futuna forever. In the quiet aftermath of Father Peter's tragic death, a profound stillness fell over Futuna. The island, once peaceful beneath swaying palms and gentle ocean breezes, was suddenly cloaked in sadness and confusion. News of what had happened spread quickly among villagers, whispered in disbelief from hut to hut. Many struggled to understand how a man whose heart was filled only with kindness could meet such a violent end. Yet, in their shock, the people of Futuna found themselves reflecting deeply on Father Peter's gentle character and compassionate message. The warrior's brutal act had not silenced the missionary's quiet voice. Instead, it amplified his teachings, causing villagers who had previously stood apart to lean in and listen carefully to the echoes of his words. Father Peter's simplicity, humility, and profound love began to resonate more deeply after his passing than ever before. Even those who once regarded him cautiously now pondered quietly on his actions, how he had cared for the sick tirelessly, helped rebuild homes after storms, and showed nothing but respect for their customs. They remembered how he never spoke harshly or forced his beliefs, choosing instead to embody his message through patient kindness. These memories began to soften hearts, planting seeds of curiosity and genuine openness among many islanders. Within months, a remarkable change started unfolding across the villages of Futuna. Quiet gatherings sprang up, where neighbors gently shared stories of their encounters with Father Peter, recounting moments when his compassion had touched their lives. Slowly, families and individuals alike began embracing the faith Father Peter had brought them, recognizing in it a message not of division, but of healing, unity, and profound peace. In an extraordinary turn of events, even the warrior responsible for Father Peter's death experienced a dramatic transformation. Haunted by remorse and quietly wrestling with his conscience, he sought answers in the peaceful message the missionary had brought. Guided by quiet reflection and humility, he eventually chose to embrace the faith of the very man whose life he had taken. Nearing the end of his own days, he expressed a heartfelt wish to be buried at the entrance of the island's small chapel dedicated to Father Peter. It was his humble act of repentance, hoping that each person who visited to honor the memory of the gentle priest would pass over his grave a quiet but powerful symbol of forgiveness, humility, and redemption. As the years went by, the island continued its transformation, and the influence of Father Peter spread like a gentle wave across Wallis and Futuna. Churches were quietly built, their modest steeples rising above villages where once ancient traditions alone had guided daily life. Families gathered on peaceful mornings to pray, their voices gently blending with the sounds of the island, the ocean breeze, the rustling leaves, and the distant calls of seabirds soaring overhead. Over generations, the islands of Wallis and Futuna became known as places of profound spiritual devotion, marked by a humble simplicity that mirrored Father Peter's own life. Today, more than a century later, his legacy remains as alive and vibrant as ever. The island's inhabitants continue to honor the gentle missionary who gave everything to share a message of compassion, forgiveness, and unconditional love. Visitors to the islands today will find quiet shrines and simple chapels dedicated to the humble priest who once walked these shores. His remains were respectfully returned from distant lands to Futuna, where they rest quietly as a reminder of his sacrifice. Each year, on a special day marked by quiet prayer and gentle celebration, islanders gather to honor Father Peter's memory, reflecting quietly on the values he left behind: kindness, forgiveness, and a deep love for one another. But perhaps the most powerful tribute to Father Peter Chanel is not found in monuments or shrines. It lives in the hearts of the people. His spirit endures in every kind gesture exchanged among neighbors, in every act of forgiveness freely given, and in every quiet prayer whispered beneath starry island skies. Father Peter's story gently reminds us all that even the smallest acts of compassion carry immense power. His life shows us clearly how kindness, humility, and sincere love can bridge even the deepest divides, transforming sorrow into hope, conflict into unity, and tragedy into redemption. Today, Wallis and Futuna remain places of extraordinary peace, shaped profoundly by the humble priest whose life quietly changed their course forever. And perhaps, as we reflect on his remarkable journey, each of us might also consider our own quiet opportunities to make a difference. After all, Father Peter Chanel's greatest legacy lies not just in what he taught, but in the powerful example he quietly lived. His story challenges us gently, yet profoundly. What if we, too, chose kindness over division, forgiveness over anger, and love over fear? Could our lives, like his, inspire change in ways we cannot yet imagine? In the peaceful silence of Wallis and Futuna's gentle shores, Perhaps we find our answer in the quiet footsteps of a humble missionary whose heart forever changed an island, and whose example gently invites each of us toward a life filled with love, compassion, and lasting peace. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video. May God bless you. Amen.